Alright, so we're back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Today we're going to look at this recent leak. It actually involves Rebirth, but it's like a compilation of like some leaks on Reddit that involve like a 9 remake and apparently a Final Fantasy X remake, which is, I got some thoughts on that a bit. But before we hop into it, I want to say that we're going to do a follow-up to yesterday's video, the trailer breakdown video. We're going to do that probably tomorrow because there's a shit ton of details that I missed or have been pointed out to me that I got a pretty big list, so we definitely need to do another video for that, for sure. And for starters, these leaks come from an account on Reset Era called I'm a Hero 2. Their account's since been deleted. We don't know why that is. There could be many, many reasons for that. They're apparently a pretty reputable leaker. They were leaking like Persona 3 remake stuff before that happened, which was later confirmed by Atlas themselves accidentally. And they've apparently been like leaking like Final Fantasy IX remake stuff outside of like the NVIDIA GeForce Now leak that happened almost 2 years ago at this point. So they apparently are a pretty reputable source, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that what we're going to talk about today is necessarily true, but we're still going to discuss it. So the first claim is that the game is releasing in January, Zack is going to be playable, and that apparently Square Enix only teased the tiniest part of the game. This part to me is kind of like whatever, just because like there's nothing substantial here. Like maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but like to say that the game's coming out in January, where we already know the game's coming out in 2024, right? So if you're like going to fake a leak, you could just name a month, early 2024, maybe you get it right. Saying that Zack is playable is something that the community's been saying for a long time. That's a possibility, so maybe that's true, but like again, that's not anything necessarily new that the community's already been thinking about anyways. And then the fact that they say that Square Enix has only teased the tiniest part of the game, well, yeah, it's the beginning stuff. Like, from what we can tell, it looks like it's all early game stuff, right? Junon or before, based on OG FF7. So to say that we've only seen the tiniest part of the game, like, no shit. The next comment says some of the same shit, but there is some new stuff to talk about. Rebirth is January. Zack is playable during a big part. Game is massive and kiss the original story completely goodbye. Tactics Remaster is probably before FF9 Remake, obviously. There's 2 new Final Fantasy games. One is a remake and an original movie. The rest is Persona shit, and that's not why we're here. So Zack having like a kind of a big role in the story or being playable during a big part, it's not really a surprise. Like whether he's dead or alive, he's going to impact the story in some capacity, right? It doesn't matter what his fate is, really. We know he's going to have a big part. I don't know what the big part would be. The game being massive, we kind of expect that. The game's 2 discs, and I think it's 2 playable discs. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but even if it's an install disc and a play disc, it's still going to be a massive game. Now, them saying that you can kiss the original story completely goodbye kind of contradicts, for one, because they do a later reply to somebody on the Reset Era thread and say that it like 50% of the game is new. So it's like, which one is it? Is 50% of the game new, or are we kissing the original story completely goodbye? So that doesn't make sense. Plus, we know that we're going to follow the majority of the FF7 story. The devs have told us that. That's what Remake did. Like, Remake had a lot of new shit, right? A lot of new shit. But if you think about it and break it down, it's really just the Midgar segment, right? We did all the same stuff we did in FF7 Original. Obviously, this is a hot topic in the community because there's a lot of people that think that we're just following FF7 Original, and maybe that happens. I think that there's going to be new stuff based on the ending of Remake, because how the fuck can there not be? But maybe I'm wrong on that too. Like, who knows? I just expect there to be some new stuff, but I think it's going to be like, I don't know if it's 50-50, 50% new, 50% old, what the ratio is of new to old stuff, but I do think we're still going to follow the same stuff. We're going to the Temple of the Ancients. We're going to have Black Materia. So the next claim there is that the Tactics Remaster is coming out probably before the 9 remake, and that there's also apparently 2 Final Fantasy games in the works. One of them is a remake. I'm not sure if that's like meaning the 10 remake or not. And that there's apparently an original movie coming out, which when you say original Final Fantasy movie, that makes me think like Spirits Within, because the original movie sounds like it's not based off of an existing property. And if that is the case, Spirits Within was absolute dog shit. I know there's some fans of that movie, but my god, that was terrible. But yeah, the original movie sounds like it's not based off of like one of the Final Fantasy games, right? That's what it sounds like to me. Maybe it's gonna be good. They've had a lot of years. They made a lot more money these days. CGI is better. I think it'd be better if you did an original movie based off of a product. Whatever numbered entry you want that to be, I don't care. And not just making a movie that like recaps the story. Like, make it new. Do like an Advent Children thing. Like, add to the property, right? Whether that's like a 9 movie, a 10 movie, another 7 movie, whatever the fuck. The next comment I couldn't find on Reset Era, I don't know if it got deleted or whatever, but apparently it said zones but smaller than 16. The battle system is still sublime. So for starters, the combat being great isn't really news or anything. Like, that's one of the things that's praised the most about Remake, right? So that's not really a surprise. Like, they're going to keep the same combat and just improve upon it. It's something we've been talking about forever, something we already knew. So that's kind of a nothing part of that. Them saying that there's zones but they're smaller than 16, and I promise I'm not just trying to sit here and debunk this damn leak. Though I don't necessarily believe it either. doesn't make sense to me because people who've actually played 16, like Max, like they've played like the first handful of hours of 16, right? And Max has looked at that trailer and said that to him, like Rebirth looks bigger than 16. So that one doesn't make sense to me. And whether it's true or not doesn't really matter because Rebirth still looks pretty goddamn big. Like the trailer for Rebirth for me, for what we've seen of what appears to be like Mithril Mine to like Junon or whatever, like that is exactly what I wanted for the game. Like people talk about open world. I think people confuse what open world is anyways. Like FF7 Original is not open world. It's a very, very linear game. And it's not even remotely can be considered open world until you have the high wind, right? You can only go so far with the Tiny Bronco. You can only go so far with the submarine, right? You can only go so far with the buggy. Unless you got a gold chocobo or the high wind, like it's a very limited game, right? So it was never going to be open world. It's like wide linear is the term that people talk. Because it's going to be a linear game, right? Like when we leave Calm, we're going to have a destination we have to go to. And we can explore as we go, but we can't, it's not like we can just swim our asses to Wutai or some shit, right? It's not like a fucking open world game. Like there's going to be limits, right? It's going to be linear in an aspect, but you're going to be able to like explore around on chocobos and those ruins and the windmills and the shit that we see in the lighthouse in the distance. We're going to be able to explore, but we're going to have a destination we have to go to eventually, right? Like, so I hear the response to a comment, and this is where they talk about it being like 50% or whatever, and it says, I'd say 50% of the game is a new direction if I had to guess. So as I mentioned previously, this is where they kind of lose me, because again, is it 50% new stuff, or are we kissing the original story completely goodbye? But also they say it's 50% if they had to guess, and it's like, well, are you guessing, or do you have inside information? Like, do you really know anything about the game or not? Like, what do you mean if you had to guess? Now, I don't necessarily doubt, like, the ratio, because I personally, again, expect there to be a good chunk of new stuff. So maybe it's 50% new, 50% old. The ratio is not bad. It's just, like, it kind of conflicts with just an earlier comment of theirs. And right here we have them responding to a comment, and this one will actually read the first part of this comment. It says, and so they're really just throwing away the FF7 story, and this will be a full-blown sequel doing its own thing. Sigh, well, I guess we all should have seen that coming with what they did with Remake. Kind of bummed about that, not gonna lie. And then they respond with, yeah, Rebirth is not as meta as Remake, which almost literally had fans as those Destiny ghosts, but it's definitely a new direction with lots of callbacks. So yeah, the topic of Remake being like a sequel to FF7 essentially is a pretty hot topic. It's another theory that's out there. It's something we talked about a lot on the channel. It's a bit polarizing, of course. I think it's a possibility just because we know that Remake's a part of the compilation. If you look at the compilation for FF7, it's supplemental materials to FF7, right? It's prequels and sequel stuff, or side stories from FF7, whatever you want to call it. So when I see that Remake's a part of the compilation, to me that screams sequel. But I've argued too in the past, in previous videos, that maybe Remake exists to put FF7 itself into the compilation. So that might be why it exists, potentially. But again, we're not here to break down the possibility of it being a sequel, but I just wanted to talk about that for a second. Now, whether or not Rebirth is going to be as meta as Remake, I guess that remains to be seen. I do think there's still going to be meta shit, right? Because we still, like, at the very beginning of the trailer, we're seeing our dead characters, whatever the fuck. There's something there to that. It definitely has us talking. There's going to be Zack stuff, and there's going to be Sephiroth fucking with our group and shit like that. Now, in terms of the callbacks, I don't exactly know what they mean. They're talking about callbacks to the OG FF7, callbacks to the compilation, things that happen in the compilation. They're talking about callbacks to Remake or whatever. I don't know. But I expect callbacks in a remake of a game. So that's more or less the video. That's like all their leaks or whatever. I think it's pretty clear by watching this video that I just kind of disagree with a lot of it. They are a reputable leaker. They got stuff right in the past. Again, the Persona 3 remake stuff. So it's possible that the things they're saying are true. But people did point out that the account getting deleted is kind of suspicious. And like one of the reasons that might be is that they were caught, essentially. The idea is that like a lot of studios will intentionally leak fake information to catch whoever's leaking shit. So it's possible that whoever I'm Hero 2 was getting their information from, like, told them, hey, Rebirth is coming out in January. And, like, that's not a true thing, right? But whenever it starts going up on social media, some guy's like, hey, Rebirth is coming out in January. It's like, oh, you're the guy that's leaking shit. Okay, we just caught you. As for the Final Fantasy X remake stuff, they replied to somebody on Reset Era, but I don't know what the original comment was. But they said, cool, that's the next remake. Not answering any questions about it. Others know, including some in this very forum, it'll hit for its anniversary, which is 2026. My thoughts on a 10 remake. 10 is my second favorite Final Fantasy, right behind FF7, right? I love Final Fantasy X. Absolutely is a crucial part of my video game career. I don't know that I want a remake necessarily. It depends on what it is. That's a big question we have with like the 9 remake and shit. What is it? Are you just overhauling the graphics? Are you building it from the ground up in like Unreal Engine 5 just to make it look better? Or are you remaking it entirely? Are you adding new stuff? What is exactly? That's a very loaded question because it depends on what a remake is for 10. I would almost rather just have a sequel, and the kind of synopsis that we have sort of for like a Final Fantasy X-3, it's not very good, but I would still almost rather have that than just remaking 10 because I've played enough 10 in my life, right? I played so much Final Fantasy X, probably almost as much as I played FF7. That's not to say that I wouldn't buy a Final Fantasy X remake, and I'd probably buy it regardless of whatever the hell it is. But it's just, that's not necessarily what I want, right? Now, if they want to like overhaul it completely, give it like almost the 7 remake treatment, add a bunch of new stuff, expand areas, like, you know, take, because it's a very linear game, right? If you take like locations and expand them, where they're a little more explorable, wide linear, like Remake's doing, yeah, I fucking want that. Like, that's fine with me. Gotta bring back the original voice cast though. And yeah, apparently there's like more 9 remake stuff out there. We haven't talked about 9 remake in quite a bit. I guess apparently from I'm a Hero 2, but I think there's other stuff potentially. And I think looking up, trying to get these like Reddit posts and stuff to talk about it for this video, I think I seen an article saying that, or a Reddit post or something saying like Jeff Grubb says that the Final Fantasy IX remake is legit. And it's not that I doubt like I'm a Hero 2 necessarily, but like Jeff Grubb, I do trust. And if he's saying it's legit, then I feel like it's legit. So like, where the fuck is 9 remake? Where's the trailer? Give me that. I really want to know what that is. Like 9 remake, the Memorial project that we got like a fucking big ass like demo the other day for 20-minute gameplay or whatever. Like that shit looks so fucking good. Makes me want to 9 remake more. Anyways, that is the video, my dudes. What are your thoughts on, I guess, 9 remake? What's your thoughts on a Final Fantasy X remake? What are your thoughts specifically on these FF7 Rebirth leaks? What do you think? Is it legit? That's the video, my dudes. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.